Meanwhile, let's talk about the medicine wheel. This is a fantastic teaching tool for all of our people if you are willing to be courageous and take a look at these teachings. And they are for everyone. So one of the first teachings I learned about the medicine wheel are the 4 aspects. And what we're taught is that every human being has an emotional, a physical, an intellectual, and a spiritual side to them. And we need to make sure that those 4 all remain in balance. And if they don't, then we open up the door for negativity and it starts causing problems in our life. And so when you find yourself in a rut and when you find that you're having difficulty in life, take a look at each of those 4 aspects. Which one does it feel like is running 120%? Are you constantly moving and not taking time for a break? When's the last time that you went out and put your tobacco out or had a prayer or just sat still and did nothing? When's the last time that you read a book or told a story or listened to a story, listened to some music? So think about the patterns in life when you start having frustration and bring back that balance. When we are talking about traditional practices or Anishinaabe practices, I know that in a lot of our communities and in a lot of our families, we feel like we've lost so much that, history hasn't been kind. However, the teachings are still here, and it's okay to go and ask and to learn. And don't be ashamed that you haven't learned, because we've all had bits and pieces that we had to learn at different stages in life. And so the teachings will come to you when you're ready and if you open up to them. When we're talking about emotional health, what are some of the things that help calm you? In another one of these video series, you might learn about EFTs or meditations. We also have a practice as Anishinaabe people of smudging. So one of the things when we're smudging that might change in life is the availability of the medicines. Where do you get the medicines to smudge? For some of us, we can grow our own medicines. Some of us live in places where they're readily available, so we can forage them at different times of the year. And for some of us, we may have to have substitutes. So if you think about Indigenous people all over the world, where they live are different medicines that do the same thing that our 4 sacred medicines, our tobacco, sage, cedar, and sweetgrass do. So don't be afraid if you're living outside of your territory or your reservation. Don't be afraid to learn what medicine is growing there. One of the most powerful things that I learned from an elder who was also a healer was that you don't have to go outside of your community to find what you need. Everything you need will be right there. So if you're living in a place where cedar isn't readily available, what is available? Learn more about the plants and animals that are there and connect to them in that way. There is a plant somewhere that will do what cedar does for you. If you thinking about connecting with family and things like that, you can have cedar sent to you. You can share and trade with everyone, but it's all about relationship, and that's the most important part of our Anishinaabe ways. So relationship with others, relationship with yourself. So I'd like to share with you, when we talk about building relationships, remember that we have a whole world out there. Before humans, there was the earth, the different soils, the rocks, the plants, and the animals, and they are still our relatives, and they're still here to care for us. So to, really solidify who you are as an Anishinaabe person, you need to rebuild those relationships with the outside world as well. And one of the teachings that I was given was connecting to the rock people, to the earth people. And so when you're in a place where you feel like you need that grounding, you feel like everything is just floating around you, or maybe you feel like you're flying away or being carried off somewhere, find something that grounds you. Go outside and with bare feet, even if it's cold out. That can be really awakening and grounding. Get that earth on your toes and your feet. And that's also one of the early teachings that we had as Anishinaabe people for our children. When our children are born and they start to walk and they have to wear shoes, one of the things that was shared with my family is putting that little hole in the bottom of their moccasin or their shoe so that they always maintain that connection with the earth. When we get too busy as adults, we forget about that connection and we need that grounding. So sometimes it's just putting your feet to the earth, And if you can't, or it's just not available to you, when you're outside, find that special rock, that special something that you can hold in your hand. And here are a couple of just some that have been special to me. This little white one was one that was when my children were younger, and I had a lot of worries and fears about growing up and them getting injured. And this is one that I kept in a pouch or in my pocket or in my hand, especially on those times when I was really, really worried for them. This one, the story that came with it is that this one had a special place on the earth when the earth was being formed. There was a lot of lightning storms that were happening, and so this is the lightning that was captured here on the earth and preserved in this rock. So when I needed that strong fire energy, that was here in this rock, and I would hold that and, just kind of sit there and keep it with me. The nice thing about having these earth relatives with us is that they can be silent and we can just keep them in quiet places and nobody has to know that they're there, but we know, and we can have those conversations and build those relationships. So another teaching that was shared was about the plant beings. And there are so many stories, so many origin stories that we can tell about the different kinds of plants that are helpers to us and that are medicines. And I invite you to ask people in your community who might know a little bit about plants. Everybody has different pieces of all of the teachings that we used to live by, and they're there. Just dig a little bit deeper and you'll find them. To me, I love being outside in the woods. I love being around the plants. I love working with the plants. And the more that you do that, the more comfortable you be, the more you'll understand their language and be able to talk with the plants. And they'll tell you what they can help you with. They'll tell you what they're capable of, and they can be healers for you. You can work together that way. This many of you will recognize as cedar. And for some of us, we pick it, we use it in ceremonies, we use it in sweat lodges, we can smudge with it where we burn it. But in this time of COVID, some people may be experiencing respiratory issues where we can't have the smudge, or some people experience asthma. So burning the smudge is a little strong for them. One of the things that I learned in taking responsibility for smudging different places where I work or at home is that if somebody's going to be allergic to one of the medicines, it's usually the sage, which is very powerful in its own right. It's very good for reducing negative energy in a room. It also has its own antibacterial and antiviral properties to it, but so do the rest of our 4 medicines. And so my go-to is usually cedar, which is also one that women on their moon time often will use too. So oftentimes people are very comfortable with cedar. So one of the ways that if you can't have smudge that you burn, one of the ways to still be able to smudge is, first off, if you're smudging a room to clear it out, you can smudge. And if there's somebody that's dealing with respiratory issues, then you'll want to have them not be in the room while you're doing the smudge and have them come back after the smoke is cleared. That's one way to kind of support family members who might still be experiencing respiratory issues. Another way to smudge without smoke, so smokeless smudge, is to use essential oils. So you can get, people do make sage essential oil. They do make essential oils with the cedar, and there's other kinds of medicines that you can use. And so you can put those essential oils in some type of carrier, like an oil. Some people might use an olive oil, or in the old days, we would have used animal grease, bear grease, or different things like that. But even simpler, you could take these medicines and boil them in a pot of water and then just wash yourself with that medicine water. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. And then, our original teachings also talk about the offerings that we make. So here is cedar that's been dried and ground up. And so, and then you can also make your own tobaccos. So here's a mix that my family has made, which is a mix of different kinds of pines and medicines that my family has learned about. So you can make your own tobacco, and don't forget the importance of offerings. So taking just a little pinch of these medicines that you've handled, that you've prayed for, you've collected, and giving those back to the earth and asking for help from the earth beings, the plant beings, the animal beings, and all of your helpers that were with you. Don't forget that we are still here and that your ancestors made sure that these teachings were still here for you. And so continue to connect to all of those things that our ancestors connected with at one time. We're fortunate that we are still here in Anishinaabe King, living in our Great Lakes areas. So use what your ancestors have preserved for you today and keep building those relationships to protect your community in the future. Before I show you how to make your own smokeless smudge with cedar, I just wanted to tell a little story about the cedar too and how it was first introduced to me. When I was younger, I used to visit my great-grandmother all the time. We were super close and I loved spending the night at her house. And one of the first memories I have of being at her house is walking in the door and taking my shoes off and looking down where all the shoes are scattered by the door and then seeing all these leaves scattered all over. And then I remember that same day putting our shoes on to go outside and play in the backyard, and some of those leaves were still in her shoes. And I remember asking her, "Grandma, why isn't that uncomfortable? Shouldn't you take those leaves out of your shoes before you go outside?" "Oh, no, my girl, this is good medicine. You should put some in yours as well." And that was my introduction to cedar and the different types of medicines and the different ways that we can use it. So some of us travel on the powwow trail, or if you have to go places you've never been and you don't know what you're going to experience there, maybe you get a little nervous about traveling or going into one of those big box stores, you can put cedar in your shoes as that protection. This grandmother spirit will be with you and becomes part of you. And when you carry it with you, you'll always have that protection. So I have other medicines here, and I'm going to show you how to do this. But remember, when we're smudging with cedar, we just kind of dry it out a little bit and then we burn it. And just like we do with sage or anything else, you just wash that smudge right over top of you, right? Wash your whole body. You can get it into your body, your mind, your spirit, and all the way down. And, if you have children who, are really having a hard time, they're really sad, they're really anxious. I used to do this with my kids all the time is, just kind of smudge them down at the end of the night. Or if the room felt kind of chaotic, I would just go off into the corner, burn some smudge, and just let that smoke go through the house. But you can do a full smudge. And make sure when you do that, you get underneath your feet and, just everywhere. And you can do this for each other and teach your kids how to do it for you as well. Another thing that you can do is once the cedar's dry, you can also crush this, make it into a fine, kind of the fine grains here. And if you don't have a lighter in your home, what I've done here is heated up a cast iron pan. It's very hot, so I don't want to burn myself. But I heated up a cast iron pan, and when it's all ground up, you can stick it in the pan. And if you can see that smoke, it's also like a smudge. You can do the same kind of thing. Just be extra careful that you don't burn yourself, or if you have a child, they don't burn themselves. We talked earlier about the different kinds of medicines you can use if you don't have cedar or sage. Let me move this out of the way. I'm going to put this down carefully. This is not my home, so we don't want to burn somebody else's counter. So if you don't have cedar or sage, but yet you still want that calming medicine, this is lavender. Many people grow lavender outside their home as regular flowers. And at the end of the season, before you cut the lavender away, or when the flowers themselves, the petals are gone, you take the buds and you can do the same thing. Again, you can use a cast iron pan or a smudge, and then you just stick it in there, and then that's also a calming medicine. Not one of our 4 original medicines, but still one that we can use nonetheless. And of course, drinking either of these medicines in a tea is also good for you. I do suggest that you talk to an elder or somebody about how to make the tea if you're going to drink it. It's not an everyday type tea that you drink, maybe a cup a day for 4 days, and you don't want to make it too dark when you boil it, because the tannins can build up and become toxic. But as a medicine, when it's prepared properly, it's a good medicine. It's a very good cleanser and really healthful. So let's turn this over. We want to go back to the smokeless smudge. So I showed you about the smoking smudge. So we're going to make this smokeless smudge. And what I'm going to do is probably take about a palm size, maybe a little bit more because I have a really big pot, maybe 2 palm size worth of cedar. So if you see how it kind of covers over my palm there. And there is a top side and a bottom side to the cedar. And I was always taught, and you can do it different ways, but I was always taught that, you're extra careful with the cedar. You're building a relationship with this plant relative. And so you look at the top side, which is its side of life. And we want to bring life to people. So if this is a medicine, we want to bring life. We want to bring healing. So I'm keeping that top side up as I put it into the pot. And I'm just kind of talking and thinking. Maybe you have a song you want to sing as you're doing this. It can be any song that makes you feel happy. It doesn't have to be a traditional native song. It can be something from the radio. And we put that in there. So another technique that I was taught by my aunt was to reintroduce myself and activate the medicine after we put it in the pot. So I'm using my left hand that's closest to my heart, and I'm reintroducing myself, my Anishinaabe name if you know it. If not, just who you are. If you know your clan, you can include that. I did talk for this medicine with tobacco outside when I gathered it, but then I stored it and kind of let it set. I told her I was going to use it for medicine, but now here I am actually using it. So I want to be specific and let it know that, I'm calling on this medicine now to come be with us in a good way, and we're looking for this good medicine to help us clear our body, minds, and spirits. And so one other technique I was taught is after you've introduced yourself, then as you're stirring this medicine with the water, you want to go 4 times backwards. So I'm going to go 4 times in a row and just kind of say a little prayer or say a little word about, I'm just asking this medicine, this good gijik, to bring our body, minds, and spirits back to that time when we were whole with Creator and creation and healed and had no issues. And we want to bring that time forward, and I'm going to spin the other way in the other 4 directions, and bring that time whole forward so that we can be healed and feel better and, remove the negativity that's around us right now. And then from there, we just let that boil. And as you can see, it's starting to turn, the water's kind of turning a nice color, yellow, green. And you can do 2 things with this. One, you can let it continue to boil and have the steam go through the entire house. It's releasing antibacterial, antiviral properties into the air. So if somebody's had the flu or has been sick, this is a good way to cleanse your home. If there's been a lot of negativity or fighting going on, this also helps remove some of that negativity as well. Not to mention it feels good. You can smudge with the steam. And for somebody who has respiratory issues, this is really, really good for your chest. It can help open you up in a good way. My son used to have a hard time with asthma, and so I would boil cedar on the stove whenever his asthma was really triggered, and that seemed to help him a lot. The other thing you can do is take this after it's cooled a little bit and give yourself a cedar bath. So you can boil this big pot, draw yourself a bath or your children a bath, and put this right in there. So instead of buying those fancy soaps and things from the store that had maybe the menthol or the Vicks, I would use the cedar water instead, and that was really good when anybody had some congestion in their chest or a cold. And if, for women on their moon time, it's great to take a cedar bath. It feels good. It helps draws toxins out of your body and helps your body work much better and heal quicker. And again, if you're doing this as a smokeless smudge, when you're all done boiling the cedar down, you turn it off and you just let it cool a little bit, and you can actually take a washcloth, and then instead of just a bath, use that washcloth and wipe yourself down. Wipe yourself down on your temples, along your forehead. You can go down your arms and your chest and down your legs, wherever you're not feeling well. And then you'll have the same effect as a smokeless smudge. You've spoken to this plant, you've built a relationship with it, and it will help you and support you. Miigwech. So one last teaching that we can't forget, because we are building a relationship with this medicine And if we want it to continue to be there for us and to work for us as a medicine, we need to take care of its life afterwards. The spirit of this plant has given itself to heal us, and now we need to take care of its body. And so some teachings or some families will take what's left over here and just put it right back outside, either where you got it from or in a special place where it can go back to the earth. So its spirit has been released, and now we're taking care of the body that's left here. Some families, the teaching is that we'll let this dry and then you put it in a sacred fire, or if you have a special fire, maybe something that you are burning scraps, or you have other medicines that you've used, you want to let that go back to the fire, you can do it that way. But just don't throw it in the garbage, because this is a special plant that means all kinds of important things to our people, and so we want to take care of it from its life to its afterlife. Miigwech.